For more on the investigation into possible ties between Trump campaign officials and Russia, we're joined now by the top Democrat in the House Intelligence Committee, California Representative Adam Schiff. He's in Palo Alto. Congressman, I want to start with something Chairman Nunes of the committee said. He suggested that some private citizens had been unmasked as a part of a surveillance effort. If, in fact, that were true, that would be a big deal, wouldn't it?
Well, it all depends. There are perfectly appropriate circumstances to unmask the names of people. In fact, that's done quite often, and the standard is whether the unmasking of those names is necessary to determine the significance of the intelligence. So unmasking is not at all unusual. The question is, was it done appropriately? And here the problem, John, is that none of us have seen what the chairman is talking about. This evidence was taken apparently directly to the White House, which creates another issue because, of course, it's associates involved in the Trump campaign who are, in part, the subject of what we're investigating. That's the bigger problem, I think, than the chairman's claim. Certainly, we want to oversee the minimization processes, make sure they're operating correctly, but we can't have a credible investigation if one of the members, indeed the chairman, takes only information he has seen to the White House and doesn't share it with his own committee. And so he has not shared that with you, including his claim that the president himself, when he was a candidate, was caught in the surveillance. Is that right? Yes, he hasn't shared it with me, and tomorrow I'll check with my colleague, Mr. Gowdy. I don't think he shared it with anyone on the committee, so we're all quite in the dark on this. And, you know, we, I think, suffered really two serious blows to the integrity of the investigation this week. One with that unilateral trip to the White House, but the other with the cancellation of an open hearing that was scheduled for Tuesday with directors Clapper, Brennan, and Sally Yates, the former deputy attorney general. I think her testimony in particular would have shed a lot of light for the public on the whole Michael Flynn chapter, and perhaps that's something the White House did not want to see. I can't otherwise account for why we would have this abrupt cancellation of a hearing that both the chair and I had committed to doing. Well, the chairman's argument is that the cancellation of that hearing was necessary because he wanted to have other closed-door testimony beforehand before having that next hearing. That seems like a reasonable idea. You know, it certainly would be reasonable if that were the justification, but of course, the one doesn't preclude the other. We welcome the return of any of the witnesses in closed session, but their testimony doesn't necessarily preclude us doing an open hearing that we had already agreed with. The witnesses were prepared to do. They were more than willing to do. So I really don't think that's the justification. Indeed, we got word that they were trying to close the open hearing even before they suggested an alternate hearing. You suggested in a tweet that the chairman was trying to, quote, choke off public information. What evidence did you have for that? Well, I think that the hearing that we had on Monday, where the director of the FBI testified for the first time that there's an ongoing investigation of potential coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russians, as well as the disclosure by the director that there was no factual basis for the president's accusation of wiretapping by his predecessor. I think that hearing went so poorly for the White House that there was a lot of pushback in doing a second open hearing. Honestly, explanations simply don't make sense. We could always have directors Comey and Rogers come back at any time. There's no necessity of having them come back before the open hearing. I think that was merely an effort to camouflage the true object here, which was the closure or the cancellation of the hearing with Sally Yates. But let me just make a... Yeah. Well, I just want to interrupt briefly, Congressman, because basically what it sounds like you're saying is that the chairman of the committee is a tool of the White House he's investigating. And if you're saying that, how can this committee get its work done? Well, look, I think the chairman has to make a decision whether to act as a surrogate of the White House, as he did during the campaign and the transition, or to lead an independent and credible investigation. I hope he chooses the latter. The country really needs to have an independent, credible investigation in the House. And we had that up until and through Monday. Where I think that the House process went off the rails was with that venture by the chairman to the White House. You simply can't run a credible investigation that way. I'm going to do everything I can to get this back on track, and I implore our chairman and the speaker to rededicate themselves to a serious and bipartisan investigation. We know that Russia was involved in hacking our democracy. We know that the evidence or information is sufficient to warrant a FBI investigation of this. We're trying to do as much of this as we can in the public eye transparently. Obviously, some of it will have to be done in closed session, but it really demands both parties work together on this. We've made every effort to do so, but we need the chairman to decide that's what his object is as well.
Congressman, there has been a report from CNN that Wednesday night that the FBI was looking into collusion with the Russians and the Trump campaign in terms of spreading information about Hillary Clinton's campaign. Do you have any information to back that up?
I'm not sure I can comment on that. I can say that I think that the investigation that the director talked about at our Monday hearing is justified. I think there is a sufficient basis for that investigation, not only to have been initiated, but for it to continue at this point. And I think that we owe it to the country to do this in a credible way. I'd make one final point, John, and that is I do think the events of this week call out the need for an independent commission, quite separate and apart from what we do in Congress. There are enough questions that have now been called, that have been raised, where I think the establishment of that commission would give the country a lot of confidence that at least one body was doing this in a way that was completely removed from any political considerations.
Quickly, Congressman, you have said that there's circumstantial evidence of this connection, but then you said you can't talk about it. Isn't that just what you're complaining about with the chairman of the committee, that he says there are things but isn't showing the evidence?
No, my complaint with the chairman is taking whatever information he has to the White House when the White House is a subject, in a way, of the investigation. I wouldn't have any problem with the chairman saying that he's concerned about whether minimization procedures are being followed. And I don't have a concern with other members characterizing the evidence as they have. And many of them have said they think there's no evidence of collusion. My disagreement with those members is I don't think that's accurate, and I feel an obligation to say so.
All right, Congressman, thanks so much for being with us. And we'll be back in a minute with a Republican.